Hello, Tom here. This is just a quick video explaining the do's and don'ts of a hip controlled articular rotation or a hip car. So I find doing it standing is the hardest, but I kind of enjoy the feeling a little bit more. So I'm going to demonstrate it from standing. I'll demonstrate it without talking and then we'll talk through it. So the hip car. Yep, so that was probably like a 30–40% tension. The whole idea behind the controlled articular rotation is to build tension throughout the body, isolate that working joint, because if, let's say, you'll see this a lot online, you'll see people making gigantic circles. It looks really impressive. You know, my hip can do all this wonderful stuff, but my hip isn't doing, it's doing a little bit of it, but my back's compensating. Everything around here is compensating and aiding to that movement. So it's not a true representation of how mobile your hip actually is in all of its ranges of motion and its movements. So we'll talk through why we obviously stay still and radiate and build tension, excuse me, and also the actual movements of the hip. A lot of people, they'll do all this stuff in the gym, all these crazy exercises, but if you think of all your leg exercises that you perform in the gym, not really any of them utilize like your end range of motion in external hip rotation and internal rotation. Like my internal rotation is, like, for me, that's really good, and you can see how little of it I have unless I like hike in the pelvis. It looks like I have a lot more. So hip car explained as we go through. First of all, I'll explain to you the movement of the hip. Okay, so adduction, coming into the center line of the body, abduction, away from the center line of the body, flexion and extension. Hip extension, for most people without compensating in the spine, is a tiny bit. Some people it's none. If you arch in the back, lean forwards, looks like you've got a lot more again. So what we do, we externally rotate that hip straight away. Then we adduct in, keep externally rotating as we flex, trying to keep that external rotation. Then we abduct whilst we're trying to externally rotate. When we get to a point where I feel like I can't go anymore, I internally rotate and push my heel back whilst keeping my glutes engaged so I don't compensate in the lower back. Then I, for a side angle, reverse that position so I go into hip extension, not much at all. Abduct again, then externally rotate to allow myself to come back into flexion, keep externally rotating, whoa, externally rotating into adduction, back down to the start. You can do this as like a little morning warm-up with not much tension at all, or you can do absolute max effort, like 100%, everything you've got really tight, and it's really tough. So hope you enjoyed the video. If you've got any questions, comment below.